Hey, honey, can you get one of the kids to show me how this Twitter thing works? Honey, I need to get on Instagram. Time for more of the Rod Pedersen Show.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Just ahead of John Frenzy, a sports update for this Friday morning. Vince Carter has called it a career. The 43-year-old retired Thursday, a formality given he'd said this would be the final season of his illustrious 22-year career, the most seasons in NBA history. Carter spent just over 6 seasons with the Toronto Raptors before the 8-time All-Star was dealt to New Jersey. Now, it was all rushed when we got in and we didn't sit down and talk about a poll question. Did you come up with one, Clark? Because a good one would be, should Vince Carter's number be retired by the Toronto Raptors? Because that's the... Okay, because we haven't tweeted anything yet. Because, no, the guy demanded to be traded out of Toronto. I don't think you retire somebody's jersey that does that. Ottawa Senators are hoping for a little luck when the first phase of the 2020 NHL Draft Lottery begins today. The lottery determines the first 15 picks in the draft between the 7 teams that missed the Stanley Cup qualifiers and the 8 that'll be eliminated in the qualifiers. And Canada Soccer is getting plenty of interest for its national women's team head coaching vacancy. The organization says it has received applications from around the world to succeed Kenneth Heiner Moller, who will return to his native Denmark at the end of August. Canada is currently ranked 8th in the world. This sports update for the Tap Brew House and Liquor Store, corner of Rochdale and Pasqua. They are open at 50% capacity. See their Facebook page for their menu. And for Red Bull Canada, Red Bull gives you wings. Everybody's writing in about our sim broadcast last night. John in Edmonton says next week it should be Saskatchewan versus Halifax. We can't do that. Halifax doesn't have a team yet. And people were saying, too, finally some touchdowns in our CFL sim broadcast, which was aired on this Facebook Live channel last night. Cody Fajardo throwing 2 touchdowns in the second half to Jordan Williams-Lambert as the Riders virtually beat the Hamilton Tiger Cats 26-4 at Tim Hortons Field. John Frenzy joins us, Hall of Fame Saskatchewan Roughriders broadcaster. How are you, Frenzy?
I'm doing great.
You are very excited about today's show, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, because we're going to talk about the fact that we had help yesterday on television and radio in Saskatoon, I guess, eh?
Help?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that. I thought you were excited to talk ball with Tori Gurley. That's the big thing, right?
Yeah, we are. But I want to just make a comment about the radio show in Saskatoon.
Well, with what John Gormley said about the Rough Riders yesterday.
Yeah, John Gormley went out there and he was upset that he hadn't heard a thing from the Rough Riders, from the president, Craig Reynolds, or the chairman of the board, Randy Beattie. And I think that's a legitimate concern. He wants to know what's going on. Because the team lost $200,000. They're going to have to give $600,000 to Montreal as a part of every team in the league. After last year, other 8 teams are going to give the Alouettes $600,000. That's something. That's something.
Well, they already did give the Alouettes the money.
I know they did, but it's hard to understand. And I guess we agree with it, do we?
Well, I wrote down on... the quote from Gorley. He says, on bad news days, these riders head for the hills. So the point was that when there's good news to be had, you hear from them. When there's bad news to be had, you don't. And he said that he would like to have had them on his program to discuss the plight of the team. Where are they? That's the quote from John Gormley. But, John, you've been around this team longer than me. Those transfer payments, if you will, all through the 90s were bankrupting the Rough Riders. I was thinking about this the other day. How come they had to have telethons just for the Riders? Because all the money from here was going to Toronto and to Vancouver, right?
Yeah, and we'd have some great years, great attendance. We knew they made a good profit of, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, and yet be announced as 40,000 or 20,000 because the transfer payments, you call them, were going to the Argos or the Alouettes to keep them alive. And we kept doing this for 20 to 30 years. I know back in 1970 we did this. Then it was 1997. So, we've been doing too much of that. It's hurt us. It's hurt this football team to have to do that. And here we are again. We're in a very critical financial situation as we talk today.
So, as I sit here and think about it, because I remember the 97 telethon, fuzzy memories of the 80s, why was it just the Riders at that time? Because now it's the whole league that needs the money. Why has it changed this time around?
I don't know the answer to that, but the Riders were the ones who were transferring it out. I know.
Right.
And they had the good money. They had, good attendance.
Well, what we're basically saying was in those telethons, the money was coming out of this province to fund the rest of the CFL.
Yeah.
And this time around, it's going to take the whole country to save the league. Fair?
In that time, we're talking about the past, the Riders were saving the league. They were here to save the league and doing it every year. They thought, well, they're going to have a big profit this year, $150,000 this year, maybe $300,000 this year. Wow, that's great. Then they'd come up with a situation where they have to help Montreal or Toronto and BC, sometimes all three, to survive for the next year. And I mean, it got to be repetitious. And it hurts. You can't do it. You can't keep on doing it. And right now, I think it's caught up to the Riders. At least according to Reynolds, he's really upset about things. He says they're in a very critical situation, the most critical situation in the history of this football team. Craig Reynolds says next year, finance-wise.
There's no doubt, and it's not just caused by the pandemic. I didn't hear the Rob Vanstone quotes on the Gormley Show. I didn't listen to it long enough, but apparently he said COVID has just exposed the fact that this franchise has been perilously perched financially. It's just ripped the cover off, that it wasn't going in the right direction. But I wouldn't say that it's caught up to Saskatchewan, John. I would say it's caught up to the CFL, because the business of the CFL financially has grown so much that we, out of this province, can't afford to support the whole CFL anymore. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So it needs to change. So what about your thoughts on our second point here that Solomon Elamimian says, the Players Association president, everybody's getting paid but the players? It's something that I knew on the back of my head, but until I saw it in black and white, I'm like, damn, he's right. This is wrong.
Well, it's hard to believe. I can't believe it. Great players like him. I mean, he's the chairman of the Rough Rider position on the players board. It's not right. It's just morally not right. I don't understand why that's happening. You don't get an answer why. It's not right. Those guys are great players. Elaminian's been an all-star this year, been an all-star the last 3 years. Outstanding player in the league 2 years ago. He should be getting played well. And he has been in the past, and he deserves to get played this year. And I don't know what's going to happen if they don't pay those players. I hear what Macaulay says, or Wilder says, James Wilder, who's a great running back, by the way, was a great one at Florida State, has been pretty good in the CFL and great in Montreal, and wants to play in the CFL, really wants to play football here. Heartbroken about that he can't play football. But he has no money. He's got 4 kids. He's going to get a job in Toronto.
Tampa.
Tampa. But he knows he has to and doesn't want to do it. And there's several people in that situation. And I just don't know what the answer is, the great players we have in this league. Because if we lose them next year, we'll have a heck of a time getting them back next year for 21.
Oh, they're gone.
Well, okay, I'm saying if we lose them for this year, 2020, if we don't put the team in the field this year, we let everybody go, fold the league for all intents and purposes, it'll be unbelievably difficult for us to get a new team right from scratch in 2021. And that's the point I'm trying to bring across. Because I was told from people, war veterans, who were around after the end of the 1944 war came to an end, they didn't have a team in the Rough Riders in 1955. The only 2 years before that were 1916 and 1917. Other than that, up from the day they started this football team, April 13th, 1910, till today, they've only missed the playoffs 3 times. Can you believe that? Isn't that fantastic?
No, that they haven't had a season, you mean?
Yeah, haven't had a season.
They've missed the playoffs
missed a season.
far more times.
But they haven't
missed a season, yeah.
But they haven't had a team.
Yeah.
We have the best record for having a team participate in this league than any other team. So he said, when we came back into 1955 to rebuild and get going again, or 46, I should say, we had a poor team, hardly anybody. We barely could put a team in the field. A losing team. 1947 a bit better, 1948 a bit better, very difficult. Finally, in 1949, when the Calgary Stampeders came into the league all guns blazing and brought some real great imports in, like quarterback Keith Spate, running, and receivers Sugarfoot Anderson and Woody Strode. The league got better, and in 48, the Rough Riders went and got an import, a legendary import by the name of Pedersen. But what's his name? Gabe Pedersen, yeah.
How do I know that? It was 1948. From listening to you.
Then things got better. 49, we're good. 50, we're pretty good. 51, we're in the Grey Cup with Glenn Dobbs, and things got better from then on. But
they had to start over.
You had to start over, and they start right from scratch back in 1946. And he said, you can't let it go. You can't let it go.
I need you to land the plane here. Like Jack in Alberta says, Rod, haven't the players always been paid the least? This is nothing new. The point is, Jack, they're not being paid at all. That's what Solomon's saying. The players aren't getting checks, but everybody else is, and they're the product. Please tell me, in what universe would that be normal, other than the Canadian Football League? Jeff, the Stamps fan, says, are you sure about those transfer payments to Montreal? Jeff, it's been reported far and wide. Just because you don't get CFL coverage in Calgary, don't blame us. There's a thing called the internet. It's all over the place.
It's hard to believe, but it is there. It's there. I know it is there. And it's ridiculous. It's insane. It's stupid. And whatever you want to call it. And they've got to act on it quickly. The next 2 weeks. I think.
Or what?
Well, the middle of July. It's what? July 1st next week. So next 3 weeks. They've got to react on it and say quickly what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. And we're going to have a league for this year beginning in October. We've all worked it out. We haven't heard from people, but behind the scenes, they're all working at it. They care. They give a damn, because it doesn't seem like they do. But we're going to hear they do. I hope that.
Jason Fichter writes in, the moderator, the owner of the Rider Prider fan page. He says, why can't players apply for CERB? I know it isn't much, but it's something. They do pay taxes in Canada. It's a great question, Jason, but we don't know the answer to that. As I mentioned, that coach that I talked to this morning, he said, why are players not eligible for federal funding? I don't know the answer. They're just not. No. Randy Ambrosie at least mentioned last week that they've applied to the government. They've requested to the government that their players be eligible for federal aid. But as we sit here today, a week later, we don't have an answer. And this, I don't know, last I checked, my bills keep piling up. Like do your bills get put on pause, John? I don't think so. Like, as they sit here and wait, these players, their bills keep mounting. It's wrong. And this is a systemic problem that's gone on for a long time in the Canadian Football League. I'll say it again. I admire Saul because he said things that I've just never really looked at, but I agree with. He goes, this is not about Randy Ambrosie. I like Randy. This has predated every commissioner. And Saul has been in the league. There's been 3, which is a problem right there. The NHL's had one commissioner since 1992. Goodell, similar with the NFL, right?
Yeah.
Like the CFL's been exposed here.
Yeah.
That's all. So this needs to be looked at in the next CFL because they're not playing, John. David Braley came out yesterday. Well, actually, a spokesman for David Braley telling TSN Radio in Vancouver that we got to play. Even at 50% capacity, we got to play. If we don't have fans in the stadiums, we're folding. Because at least it's some revenue. It's like what you say, Jason, with CERB, at least it's something. That's what Braley's saying. What did he say? 20,000 people in BC Place Stadium, at least paying some ticket in revenue, some concession revenue, if they're allowed to do that. But it's not going to happen.
I cannot, and you've heard me say this before, believe there isn't a group of influential men, key people in each team, got together, I guess the owners and presidents, or general managers, to get something going on this, because it's going to be too late pretty soon. In a couple of weeks, it'll be too late.
They can't change the border being closed. They can't change the quarantine laws.
Well,
that's what's holding them up right now.
Well, the quarantine laws are being altered a little bit, and the boys coming across the border, that's going to be altered a little bit. Our coach got back, eh?
Yeah, a while back from Montana. Colin is watching in Ottawa. He says Braley has already said he won't do hub cities, and you got to think his word means a lot with the Board of Governors because he's saved the league in the past. There was a time David Braley ran the CFL. He owned 2 teams.
Oh, I know.
Which everybody thought was a joke. I didn't. He saved the CFL at the time. You know what? Braley has saved the CFL so many times. I think he's sitting there going, I'm not doing it anymore.
Oh, I think he is too.
That's the sense that I'm getting.
Enough. And maybe he should say finally had enough and hell with it and see what happens. I was quite surprised that we've gone through this thing 3 times, this Montreal thing. 1970, 97, and again right now. And last year. I didn't know that. I thought it was just once. So it's been a problem.
Tarsi Shindelka in Edmonton's watching. He says, return Mark Cohan. We need a commish that can actually grow the game and have compassion for all sides. This would be a stiff test for Mark Cohan. This would be a stiff test for anybody to save the CFL in this climate. Listen, we're going to break frenzy. This is what you've been waiting for. And get ready. I'm going to butter you up, Tori. You've seen him on ESPN, Fox Sports, NFL Network, SEC Network. What else? The Rod Pedersen Show. And on the field in the National Football League, Canadian Football League, and NCAA. The great Tori Gurley joins us right here in the bunker next. It's a Football Friday on the RP Show, Facebook Live, Game Plus TV Network, and listen live at rodpeterson.com.
You're watching Rod Pedersen on demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpeterson.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.